What's happening, everybody? TK here, TK and Drinks, and welcome to another episode of Inside the Mead Maker Studio, where we explore the world from world of mead making, talk to mead makers from around the world, and catch the buzz on some of the best meads around. So, thank you for joining me today. Anybody who's watching this live, and of course, all of you who watch the recorded version. Always appreciate when anybody pops in, all the likes, the follows, everything. Again, always appreciated. Tonight, we are going to be speaking with Michael Fairbrother from Moonlight Meadery. They're out of Londonderry, New Hampshire. They've got a meadery, they've got a brewery, they've got a farm restaurant. They've got a whole bunch of stuff going on there. Michael has been in the game for quite a while, so he's going to hopefully display his vast wealth of knowledge for us all. And looks like he's just popped in right there. And let's just get straight away into it. I love it. New ringing sound for Instagram. Sounds like somebody's on with me.
Hello.
Yay! A little bit. I'll take it. Oh, there we go. And let there be light.
How are you, TK?
I'm doing good, Michael. How are you doing
I'm
today?
great. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for joining me. I've been wanting to talk to you for quite a while. I think we've bumped into each other a few times in the past, and just great guy to meet, and I'm glad to have you here.
Awesome.
So, anybody who, like I was saying before you popped in, anybody who doesn't know, Moonlight Meadery isn't just a meadery. They've got a meadery, they've got a brewery, and what I believe looks like almost a farm-to-table restaurant there. So if you want to give us a little background about yourself, the organization, the operations you got going on, and we'll get into it and talk about your delicious meads and all your awesome trade secrets.
So I started making mead back in 1996. I was at a homebrewers meeting and somebody offered me a sizer and never
Ooh,
tried a sizer before. Didn't even know what it was, but like a baby to candy, I said, "Wow, this is good stuff," and I got pretty good at it. And so we
yeah.
we started the brewery in 2017. Started commercial production for the meadery in 2010. And the
Oh, wow.
restaurant started just about a year ago.
Okay. So the restaurant's definitely the newest player in the game.
Yeah, it's it's taken me by storm, but yeah, we should make it.
I can only imagine that opening a restaurant amongst doing all of your other stuff. I mean, because those are both the brewery and the meadery, I imagine, are both full-time jobs as well. Now you got to trying to open a restaurant and get all that stuff dialed in. So I'm sure you've got your hands full during the day.
Yeah, at least I don't have to make the beer. I've got a really talented brewmaster who I've got a
Right.
world of faith in. Him and I used to homebrew together 20 some odd years ago now, and he
Nice.
won a World Beer Cup last year for our Russian Imperial Stout, and we got two
Oh
more
yeah.
entries this year. So we have some pretty high expectations, but it's if you don't hold yourself to expectations, you never make what you want.
Hey, that's very true. One of the things that always goes around when, I guess the kind of debates that goes around when I talk to different mead makers is it better to have people and just making mead in general, regardless of the quality of the mead, just because that advocates for the brand as a whole, regardless of whether it's, subpar basement meads or, something like yourself, a high quality commercial mead, or is it, better to only, expose people to the quote unquote proper or higher class or well made, whatever the term you want to use. What do you
So,
think is the
so
better route to
that's a
go?
great question. I never ask customers, and I've tried to teach my staff not to ask customers if they've ever tried mead before,
Oh
because
wow,
that's not relevant. What's relevant, have they tried my meads before? Because we've every competition I've entered since 2010, I've taken a medal at, and sometimes best of show, and sometimes grand champion.
yeah,
And the difference between excellence and great is very small. And
sure,
to get to an excellent level of mead making takes a lot of consistency and a lot of understanding of what flavor works and why it works and how it works to get to that level. And I'm not saying everybody can't get to that level, but it's I haven't seen too many who can consistently reach that level. There's certainly several that I know of and consider as friends and
sure,
colleagues in the industry that can do that. But it's where the medals and trophies are interesting,
Yeah.
but it's the medals of the cash in the bank that really makes me happy at the end of the day.
Right. The sound of the change dropping in the old piggy bank is what really matters.
Yeah, 1,000 cases a week going out the door is not a bad day.
Yeah, because you guys are fortunate enough to be have some fairly wide distribution compared to many other meaderies out there, which is, I think, a very, wise business decision. Many meaderies focus solely on their local community or who can, even um, regionally at best. But you guys have, expanded far beyond the Northeast. What was your biggest fear in going beyond the region and expanding out to that broader
Uh,
audience?
if your audience wants to look at a video of me dancing in 2011 to our first distribution deal to California from New Hampshire,
Okay,
my kids kind of caught it on camera and posted it up there for me. But
nice.
I'll live in infamy on this thing. But I was just ecstatic to think that I was going to be presenting at the National Homebrewers Conference because I'm a lifetime member of the American Homebrewers Association. And
Oh,
here I
cool.
was going to my first conference as a pro brewer, and they were going to be selling my mead in California at the time. And it's not an easy road to get to 40 states of distribution. I mean,
Right.
I've lost track of how many distributors we've come and worked with over the past 14 years now, but it's over 80, maybe closer to 100 now. And it's yeah, it's if I could do it again, I might have done the same thing.
Oh, wow.
But trying to understand, what makes you different and why and how can you compete in a market where every big player, the breweries don't want you there. When they created the seltzers, that knocked a lot of meaderies out of the shelves. I've got a lot of friends that had meaderies that had to go out of business. I can't say we're
Yeah,
doing fantastic, but we're still struggling trying to make it work. And
yeah,
the restaurant was certainly taking an awful lot of risk on
yeah.
my dime and my parents as they're investors in my company. But I'm pretty solid about, we've got two companies. We have a holding company, we have the operating company. And if I have to sell the holding company and sell off the farmstead to keep the operating company afloat,
Wow.
I'll do that. It's just,
Sure.
it's a smart business decision.
Man, that's quite the. I mean, I say that's quite the sacrifice you're willing to make, but it's a smart business decision, and it seems like you didn't go into this, um, you know, just all willy-nilly. You kind of had your ducks in a row and knew what you were doing and knew the sacrifices that might have to be made, should the situation arise.
Yeah, my bankers had told me we didn't get you here to walk away, and
Right.
economy changed and the interest rates changed, and they walked away. So here I am. It's
Man,
it's a tough life, but
yeah,
it's fun to see customers come in and react. I mean, I pulled out some barrel conditioned raspberry mead tonight we're doing some local dinners with local farmers up this way,
yeah.
and to see people's reaction to this gold medal Mazer Cup winning a mead was just fantastic.
Well, one of the things, like if you go on to anybody who goes onto Moonlight Meadery's website, they have um, an award section specifically, and I haven't really ever seen that on anybody's website. Maybe a few people here and there, it might have a short list, but yours is this. I mean, this cacophony of just awards. Utopia having, close to a dozen awards. Desire's got almost half a dozen. Smolder's got three. Embrace working at four. I mean, and it just goes on and on down the list, all the way back to 2010 for some of these, 2013. um, you've had continued success in that category. I'm highly impressed. What would you say was your biggest attributing factor to all those awards and to the success and to the success of the meadery in general?
Yeah, so I learned how to make mead the old school way. I mean, I basically tried trial and error forever, and then I tried to figure out, okay, that's not working. Now
Yeah,
what? So I became friends with like Gordon Strong, Susan Rude,
Yeah.
Kurt
Yeah.
Stock, a lot of these home mead makers and national master level judges, and tried to figure out what worked. And I was a longtime member of Brew Free or Die, the homebrew club here in New Hampshire. And when
Nice.
I brought mead to a party or to a meeting, I watched the reaction of people. I wanted to see what made people's eyes light up. What was the intrinsic beauty? And I called this art in a glass. And
Yeah.
I've taught at the Robert Mondavi Institute at UC Davis, and
Nice.
Tom Repus was there, and he was passing out some of his mead, and I immediately declared art in the glass. And it was, there's this nuance of aroma, smell, or aroma, taste, and sight that if it's perfect, it all just goes together so perfectly well.
Yeah.
And there are many amateur mead makers that are as good, if not better, than a lot of commercial mead makers. And just
Sure.
because you're commercial doesn't mean you're making great mead. But we're
You had
approaching,
a
I think, a
business
little.
plan.
We're approaching almost 2 million bottles of mead and cider sold in the last 14 years, and they're
Good
tiny
Lord.
bottles. They're 375 milliliter bottles. We get
Right.
about $16 to $250 a bottle, depending on
Yeah.
if it's how it's aged and whatnot.
Yeah.
But you got to believe in what you do, right? You got to believe in that flavor and that taste. And if it sucks, throw it away.
Right.
Don't put it in the market. You need to be your harshest critic, right? So you need to
Absolutely.
understand, you know, what makes something different. Like we make one hazy mead that hazy on purpose because it's got cinnamon oil in it. And this
Ooh.
is a mead that I can't remember when the HA conference gave away this Fireball mead as
Ooh.
a
The promotional
whatever tasting
item.
bottle promotional, yeah, at a conference. But it was they put fireballs in actually into the mead, and I was trying to figure out how to replicate this.
Mm.
And one of my friends eventually gave me some cinnamon oil, and that was the magic that brought it from interesting to exceptional. And we sell so
Nice.
much of this now, it's hard to keep it in stock. So it's
Hey, that's a good problem to have.
yeah, I really. I, I tell everybody. Everybody asks me what's my favorite mead, and I say the one in my glass
Yeah.
because I
Nice.
really make them for me. Because if
Yeah.
nobody's going to drink them, I got to drink them, and I'm drinking what I like.
That's a fair way to look at it. You'd mentioned, that you sell meads everywhere from, say $16 all the way up to 250. And that's one of the things that that I found unique and interesting and really respect actually about Moonlight Meadery is that you run the entire gamut. You've got entry level meads for people just coming in that are, aren't, that are still looking at sticker shock for mead prices. And then you've got stuff for all the high end connoisseurs, the people, the mead junkies, the mead heads out there looking for that utopia and those, higher end aged bottles. Was that the plan all along, was to try to hit all those price points, or did it kind of just
Yes.
fall
So
into place that way?
it evolved. We got some pretty good nationwide market placements, so big chain stores. And
Yeah,
so that really meant I had to be pretty price conscious. But then I
sure.
wanted to also go for the craft beer stores. So how do I do that? So I've created over 120 different meads in the last 14 years. So we had some that were, our mainstays. This is what we make all the time, big
Yeah,
batches. This is for the Trader Joe's, the Wegmans, the Total Wine and Mores, the Bevmos.
gotcha.
This is
Yeah,
or Specs down in Texas.
the
So these
regional
are
liquor stores.
yeah, this is you can depend on this always being close enough to being what what I make. And
Right.
then we started creating specialty one-offs, sometimes big, sometimes small, but
Yeah,
really not meant to ever go into mainstream liquor stores or
right.
the accounts. And so that set kind of a precedent of, okay, well, we can deal with two different types of customers or end customers. And
Yeah,
then, when we started with the Utopian, you know, it started at like $30 a bottle, and I haven't really raised the prices of my my lowest price meads in 14 years. So you got to imagine the price of a glass bottle, the honey, the fruit, everything else has gone through the roof. But I've really kind of tried to hold tight to a pretty reasonable, I feel, entry point price point.
Yeah.
But with Utopian, it started at $30 a bottle, and now it's
Wow.
at 250 a bottle. And it's because it took 10 years to make.
Yeah.
We'll release batch 15 at 15 years in the barrel, then batch 20 at 20 years in the barrel.
Bananas.
And what I did was some market research. I tried to see what was, a good price dessert wine.
Yeah.
Sauternes come up, and their price points are about 250 a bottle. And I said that it doesn't take you 10 years to make a Sauterne, so why not?
Yeah.
And we are the only fine wine made in the state of New Hampshire, sold in New Hampshire state liquor stores. And,
Wow.
it's right next to the
The big guys.
$250. Yeah, the really expensive stuff. You got to get
Yeah.
somebody with a key to open the case to even let you take a look at it. And,
Right.
they run sales. I mean, New Hampshire State Liquor Store occasionally has 20% off sale, and that's a pretty decent
Yeah.
bargain on
Yeah.
on
No
on
kidding.
some of the meads, because you could buy 12 bottles of your favorite red wine and pick up a bottle of Utopian and knock off, $50. So not
Right.
not a bad deal. Can't
Well,
say
you were
my mouth
courteous.
was.
Yeah, and you're courteous enough to give us a discount tonight. So anybody who's watching, hit up Moonlight Meadery's Vino Shipper. Use code TK and Drinks, get you 5% off a bottle. If you want to hit one of them Utopias, but my math, man, that's almost free shipping on that bottle. So that pretty much makes it worth it, in my opinion. Free shipping on that bottle, I'm down for that.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
No, thank you very much for believing in me and my audience to offer any sort of discount at all. I'm loving it. I think it's a unique thing, and I hope more meaderies jump on that in the future.
No, I
Actually, we had a
appreciate.
question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I
Oh,
was just going to say,
as
I appreciate what you've done for, or are doing for the meat industry.
oh
I've
well,
I've taken, I consider I build a highway and everybody else is following in my pathway.
yeah,
But it takes a lot of people knocking on a lot of doors to get meat into the mainstream. And
absolutely.
customers certainly who love mead will find mead. But when a store in Colorado put our meads in the wine section and also ran a competition between the beer section sold 4 times more of our mead than the wine section, because beer
Whoa,
drinkers are better knowledgeable about mead than wine
right,
drinkers. Wine drinkers aren't looking for something they had never heard of before.
right. Oh, 100%. Yeah, vast majority of the mead consumers I know came from the beer route, or not from the wine route, I guess is the way to put it. And that's that's amazing. 4 times the amount of of sales in the beer section, but I guess it's not really surprising. We did have a question here from John Houlihan down at Brulahan Meadery in Miami. He was asking, how many and what size fermenters are you using at Moonlight to keep up with that current level of production? He's saying, he says 1,000 cases a week. He's again down in Miami. He says that every Total Wine's got your guys' stuff in stock all the time. So you must have some pretty decent sized
Yeah,
production facility,
our
can you?
biggest fermenters are 100 barrels, so 3,100 gallons. So
Oh
that's
wow,
31,000 bottles. Um, you know, I don't do the math too often these days, but
sure,
we've got three, four, five of the 100 barrel fermenters.
wow,
So we can kind of keep up. It's yeah, it's hard sometimes, but
yeah.
so it's about 9,000 pounds of honey per batch.
And do you guys build like a base? I mean, because I'm assuming some of your stuff is fermented fruit, like on the or has fruit in fermentation. Some of the stuff is probably just, secondary addition. Or do you have
Yeah,
certain
so
batches that?
all the melomels are fruit infused first prior to fermentation. All the methaglens would be usually a traditional orange blossom base mead
Yeah.
with the spices added in secondary.
Okay. So the melomels get fruit in primary and in secondary. The melomels are a traditional that are basically spiced up
Yeah,
afterwards.
so I don't want to scrub the
Okay.
aromatics of the spices out, so that's
Sure.
why we don't do that up front.
Uh, no, that totally makes sense. Is there one that sells? a lot better than you were expecting it to, or maybe rephrase that. Is there one that performs differently than you were expecting it to, either positively or negatively?
Not based on expectation,
Oh,
but the Kurt's
that's
apple
good.
pie is our best seller by far and away. And
Yeah.
my best friend created this mead back in 1996. He gave me
Oh
a
wow.
bottle, and I tasted it. I said, "God, it tastes so good," and it was 16% at the time. Pretty much knocked me out that night because he gave me a 750 milliliter bottle.
Oh wow.
And when I went pro, he asked me if there was anything I could do for him, or he could do for me, and I said, give me that recipe," and he did. So
Oh
that's
wow.
why his name's on the bottle. So Kurt Demmer.
Nice.
A lot of my
Go
homebrew
Kurt.
friends might know of Kurt because he's been to many of the original Mazer Cups and Mead conferences out in Denver and such with me over the
Yeah.
last 20 years. But
Yeah. Because you're a competition meat judge as well, and have had your hands and toes in the different pies of all sorts of different mead uh, situations throughout the years. I'm not quite sure if you were involved in the 2015 BJCP guidelines directly, but I'm sure you've mentioned being involved with Susan or talking with Susan Root and all these things. So you've had to have had some sort of say or at least influence in those types of things.
yeah, my name's the only name on the front cover for Professional Mead Maker, the 2015 BJCP Mead Style Guidelines. So,
Right. That's what I was thinking. I'm pretty sure I seen your name on there.
but
And
and several of my meads are the de facto standards, which the categories are defined. But I've
right.
judged mead now for 28 years. I've
Yeah.
judged meads in commercial and amateur levels in Australia, Argentina,
Oh wow.
Chile, Poland.
A Mead Madness Cup.
Yeah, all over the United States. It's just, and I've been so blessed to being asked to be a best of show judge at the Mazer Cup. I can't
Yeah.
remember how many times now, but I've taught at the Robert Mondavi Institute at UC Davis. I helped them build their mead class.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's. I do this for love, right? If there was money, I would have stayed in software engineering. But yeah, I would
Fair
have.
enough.
I would have been retired by now, but here I
Yeah.
am, still doing what I do because I love what I do, and yeah, I'm just really thankful that I've been talented and blessed enough to be this good at what I do.
And and I think that speaks volumes that you've been around for as long as you have been and have been able to be as successful as you are. It speaks volumes about the quality of products you put out. I was fortunate enough to review some of your products a few years ago, and like the Desire, the Wild, again the Kurtz apple pie. These were all, I mean, in my opinion, higher end meat. We're talking like 38s to 45s in the range and all these things. Is it like, I don't know what the phrase for it is. It nerve wracking to have such a high standard to live up to know that everything you put out it is going to be judged on such a high scale compared to everything else you put out before it?
I don't think of it that way. Um, I really think about it as, you know, the reason I got into cooking and wanted to be a cook and wanted to go into being a chef when I was a kid,
Yeah,
because I love flavor, right? My mother taught me to think about flavor and to think about how to make flavors. So when I think about a mead that I'm trying to make, I'm thinking about what flavor am I trying to achieve. Like if I think about, our monkey bread mead that
ooh,
won a
yeah,
best of show, which was a banana chocolate orange mead. And I walk into this festival in Ohio and I see this big trophy and I go, "Hey, what's with the trophy?" They go, "It's for the winning beer tonight." And I go, "Well, what if it's not a beer?" They go, "That's not going to happen." And I won the trophy, right?
heck
Like,
yeah,
so I'm very, very competitive. I'm very self-confident, and I think I'm self-confident because of the success we've had, but I'm very shy, and it's hard for
yeah,
me to, get in front of people who don't know what meat is and talk about meat and think about it. But you put me in front of a room of 5,000 homebrewers to talk about, making meat and doing what I love for a living, or trying to figure out how to make a utopian
yeah,
with my connections with Samuel Adams and trying to do this. It's because, I put in the time, I put in the work.
right,
These folks have given me an opportunity that I never would have had, and it was because I was a beer geek, right? I was a mead geek. I was the guy that just always kind of hung around at the end of the conference trying to see what I could get and how I could talk to people and how I could meet people.
Yeah.
And in 2009, I got to meet Omar from Surly Brewing Company in
Oh wow.
Minnesota, and I was talking to him about, making sure he got his keg back because I had shipped some of his beer to my house here in New Hampshire for a New Beer's Eve party. And I was telling him how I was going to start Moonlight on the side and just do this as a hobby. And he changed my life with one single sentence. He said to me, "How can you possibly think you can do something you love part time?" And that
Wow.
was the game changer. And because I kind of never thought I would quit the day job, and here I am 14
Yeah.
years later, and I haven't worked for anybody else. And it's I got a lot of employees. We've had good times and bads,
Yeah.
but we're still ticking, and we're trying to figure it all out.
I love that. That's a phenomenal phrase. How can you possibly do something you love part time? And I think that's true to to anything in life, but especially if it's something you're going to do as turn your passion into a business, so to speak.
Yeah.
And that's a good that's a good piece of advice. I'm going to definitely hold on to that one. Entering all these competitions and doing the judging and stuff. I've been talking with people in the current, say younger mead community, the current, the up and comers, so to speak. And there's a lot of people out there that have some, I would say, um, misnomers, but they have some concerns about judging and competitions in general. They feel that there's some people out there that feel that competitions kind of favor those who can spend more money on their products and can kind of buy like the higher end ingredients. Do you feel that competitions kind of favor those who have more money to spend on their products, or do you feel it's,
There's
the
no
end result is you know,
the
whatever
judges.
you make it?
The judges have no idea what's being spent on a mead,
Sure.
and how it gets processed. I mean, I was making best of show winter meads 3 months in, back in 2009. Um, it's just it's this technique, right? So, if
Yeah.
you want to get a clear mead, you have to rack it. If you don't have filtering techniques, right? So, and if you want to have really good clean fermentation, you need to use staggered nutrients, and you need to understand why nutrients are required and used, and what your yeast likes to use, and what temperature it likes to work at.
Yeah.
So, I'd made, I don't want to exaggerate the number, maybe 30 different half-gallon size batches of mead in one year, just so I could taste what each type of honey fermented out tasted like. So,
Nice.
like, I had buckwheat, butterbean, star thistle, you know, goldenrod, you name the honey. I was
Yeah.
tracking honey down from across the country. And
Yeah.
then I, fermented each of these, and I got maybe 6 bottles out of each batch. And I brought those with me to the National Homebrewers Conference so that I could do a blind tasting with folks like Gordon Strong and Susan and Kurt
Yeah.
and a half dozen other people. I can't always remember who was in the
Sure.
room, but and we had Lahua honey from Hawaii, and people were able to pick up the pineapple notes in that honey. So honey is like the terroir that grapes present in like a wine, right? So you can really get very unique flavors out of the honey. So for tonight's dinner, I opened up our first release of our organic honey mead. And
Oh,
it was really, really intense, rich honey flavors to it. And I haven't tried this mead or this batch of this mead in probably 8 years. So
holy
to
cow.
think of this mead just sitting in my cellar at perfect ambient temperature for 8 years, waiting for the perfect time to shine.
Yeah.
And, my chefs had made this French onion soup. And I thought, well, the honey notes probably tie in with that, hook into that onion flavor. And that's
Yeah.
that's how I presented it to the room tonight to talk to them about, why mead is so diverse. And if you think about how honey and chefs can work with honey to share,
Yeah.
to create flavor profiles, like whether it's with cheese plates or baklava or with a roast, it
Yeah.
has all these context flavors that acts as a bridge. And you can do the same thing with really good mead making. And it's it's not just for dessert, right? It's
No, for
not
sure.
just the super sick sweet stuff that just can't be enjoyed anywhere else. And we have customers that'll won't drink anything else but mead, based on
Right.
what we've done. And there's a grocery store chain here in New Hampshire called Market Basket. They're in part of most of New England, I guess now. But it's a more value for your dollar to have my meads in their stores and consistently sell week after week after week
Yeah.
for 14 years now. It's because it's quality. You have to figure out quality first.
Yeah.
Everything else
Yeah.
pales in comparison. Your price points, you can figure out what you want to do with your price points, but if you can't make a quality mead time and time again, and even though we have what I call a window of where I want my flavors and aromas to be,
Yeah.
never, not one batch is ever the same.
Right.
But if it's in the window, my customers will give me that, okay, a little different, but we like this, you know.
Yeah. How do you? I was just writing down a question I want to make sure to ask you is how do you ensure that your quality is still the same today as it was when you were, starting off, or do you feel like you've grown in quality? Do you feel like you've had to make some sacrifices? Because like John down there in Miami is saying, 1,000, one of your tanks is what he's done in 18 months for his entire business. So, there's a little bit of a dichotomy, a little bit of a difference in making what the volumes that you're making at quality versus somebody who's just starting out.
Yeah, so the biggest trick was learning how to get to ratios, right? Like, so I
Sure.
had my recipes that were all ratio based. Once I got there and understood where the flavors came from and what contributed to everything, it wasn't too hard to ramp up. I mean, we started in 5 gallon glass fermenters, and then
Yeah.
it sold out in 2 days. So then, we're like, okay, now what? So we go to
Right.
55 gallon plastic drums, and then we had 120 gallon plastic conicals, and then we
Hmm.
got 500 gallon stainless steel tanks, and we got 1,000 gallon stainless steel tanks, and now we got 3,000 gallon stainless steel tanks. So it's
Yeah.
it's a as you grow and you find I mean, I can't say every single batch has ever always been a winner. We try to use variable capacity tanks, and at one point we had some um, the gaskets lost their inflation, and we had to lose a batch.
Ooh, that sucks.
And yeah, they'd already sulfited it, so I couldn't even distill it down to figure out what else to make with it.
Oh,
But yeah,
oh,
it took time, and we found a way to make it into some vinegar, and it made a lovely salad dressing.
balsamic.
But yeah, you don't want to do that too many times in your lifetime. And but with Bernice and I always thinking about the flavors and the aspects of what we're trying to accomplish, and
Yeah.
what do we want it to work with. She's been the one of the biggest forces to drive me towards success that we have, and it's just her and I. That's my wife.
Yeah.
Her and I have always been, the feet on the ground, figuring it out, problem
Yeah.
solving. And not everything turns out the way you want it to. And when you have a
Sure.
batch, like we lost some cider that had a pellicle on the top, and it was beautiful when we put it into the barrels, and somehow something wasn't done right and it formed a pellicle. And I said, well, what are we going to do with this? And I'm like, we're going to barrel age it. And we let it age in a barrel for 6 years, and it dropped brilliantly clear. It's super, super tart. It's
Oh,
not
wow.
balsamic-y or anything. It's like a Normandy style cider, and it's just beautiful.
Interesting.
But you got to understand it takes time, and
Yeah.
and not everything's a quick, easy 3 month turnaround time.
Well, and this years of experience and your wife's experience, and that gave you guys the ability to see past, the faux pas that was in front of you to say, hey, look, we can turn this lose into a big W, and now you've got an amazing, unique um, Apple, sizer type thing going on there that it seems to be probably not something that many people, if any, even have available other than yourselves, or did, or
Yeah,
whatever the
and
case may be.
we've played around with other things too now. So we've done like a maple apple cider donuts. So it's
Whoa.
It's
Oh,
maple, apple, and honey, aged in a bourbon barrel for 7 years,
yeah.
and we only have it on draft, and it's everybody's like, "Oh, when can we get a hold of some of this to go?" And I'm like, "Yeah, not anytime soon.
Not
Yeah,
happening,
it
pal.
takes too long to make, and I'm rather happy selling it by the glass."
No kidding. You guys do one brewery collab that I've seen. You guys make a braggot with Smog City. How'd you guys come up on that link up? That's a pretty cool
So
one.
the National Honey Board was paying me to teach professional brewers how to make beer with honey. So
Mm,
Jonathan Porter from Smog City reached out to me and asked if I'd like to come out and do a collaboration with him. But
so,
I've also done collaborations with Stone,
oh,
Heretic, Urban Chestnut, um, Caliber. Oh, I think Caliber in Australia,
oh, oh,
Red
very
Hill in
cool.
Australia. So I've done beer collaborations pretty
Oh,
much
quite a
all
few.
over the globe at this time.
Nice. Um, what is it that, well, you said it's the love for the industry and the passion for the mead that keeps you going and keeps the meadery going. It's what, keeps the restaurant going. How is it that you've um, come to benefit the mead community other than by all these definitions? Like, what would you? I guess a better way to put it is like, what do you think is the biggest contribution you've made to the mead community? Because unfortunately, I don't feel a lot of people really give some of the legacy mead makers enough credit for what they do.
Yeah, it's well, I didn't do it for the credit. So
Well, no,
the for me, that the passion of walking into a bar in St. Petersburg, Florida, and presenting my meads when the guy's like, I don't want to try a mead, and nobody likes meads, and then I'm trying my mead and says, I'll take your entire catalog. That's kind of the game I brought to the table. I mean,
gotcha.
I think I've clocked almost 1 million miles across this country, talking and presenting to folks about mead,
Very
and
cool.
walking into, whether it's Fisher Island off the coast of Miami, which is like a multi-millionaire complex of, we had to be escorted onto the island, then escorted to our booth, and security checks, fingerprints, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah,
And then, Opulence magazine had gotten us there, and people were just like, nobody drinks mead. And this one lady comes up and she goes, "Oh my God, this is good." And next thing you know, we had a line out the door. And whether
yeah,
it's with Mohegan Sun and their wine festivals, and, we've broken down barriers that nobody ever
yeah,
expected anybody to break down. And I'm not alone in this. Michael Fall from Rabbit's Foot, he's been
yeah.
at the French I want to say the French Bistro, but some high-end restaurant
French
in
Laundry.
Cal, the French Laundry, yes,
Yeah,
French Laundry. You got Ken Schramm, you got Brad Dahlhofer.
yeah.
Sergio before they shut up,
Closes
closed
up.
down
Yeah.
shop.
Superstition. Those
It's
guys. Yeah.
yeah, it's Jeff at Superstition. I mean, I was president of the American Mead Makers Association. This wasn't
Mm,
anything I got paid to do.
yeah.
It was just trying to figure out how to drink different, I guess. How to
Yeah.
brand something that the world really, newspapers do us so much injustice because they always want to put a pun on what mead
Dude, I
makers are
hate that
trying to
shit
do.
so much.
And
I
it's
really
it's
do.
it's not just trying to say, it's
It
for me,
cheapens everything.
well, it cheapens everything, but they don't count the value that we've brought to the table. Nobody
Right.
asks a sausage maker what goes in the sausage, right? Like,
True.
you want the sausage to taste good. I want the beverage to taste good. I don't
Yeah.
care if you can't taste honey. I don't care if you can. I want you to taste the totality of the beverage and think,
Yeah.
"Oh my God, why have I not had this before? And what am I going to do with this next?" And
Yeah.
we've pushed the envelope. I mean, I've gotten my share of trouble with law enforcement or TTB and everybody else.
Sure.
I mean, I I don't like to hear that mead's not a category, right? Like the United
Yeah.
States government finds mead as one thing, and it's not a class of beverage like beer.
Right.
It's a type of honey wine with less than 14 pounds of hops or whatever. But
Yeah.
it's ridiculous. The rest of the world does not have these limitations.
Yeah.
But with the folks at the American Mead Maker Association, we at least pushed further than we'd ever gotten to before,
Mhm.
to define, trying to work to get mead as defined as a beverage that is a category. And
Yeah.
but I've seen homebrew competitions that exclude mead from the best of show table because like, oh, it's so different, it can't be judged against a beer.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm like, that's bullshit. It's no easier or harder to make a lager than it is to make an exceptional mead.
Right.
It's about that totality of the beverage. And it was that winning the New England Regional Homebrewer Competition 3 years in a row and winning that best of show against every other beverage in the BJCP style category that pushed me to start my company. It
Yeah.
was that event and seeing that happen. And now, I see mead being said, well, you can have the best of mead, but you can't, we don't want to judge against beer. Why are beer judges so afraid of letting mead or anything else, a cider, be the best of the table? Best of show
Right.
means should be best of the show,
Yeah.
not best of beer, best of mead.
Yeah.
They are different elements, but they are uniquely qualified to be the best, if they are the best.
And and that's one thing that I am really enjoying about I've only been doing this for a few years now, about 4 years, and I'm really enjoying seeing um the mead category itself really grow. We have several now mead specific competitions out there. That you got the American, the AMMA's got the Home Mead Maker of the Year that they do, um, and now and was it last year the Mead Institute started with the U.S. Mead Open. You've got tons of different, and of course Mazer Cup. You've got tons of mead specific competitions. Do you think it's going to continue to go the route of like the beer guys say, for my terminology, being afraid to recognize mead as its own thing, or do you feel that they'll continue to kind of just like let it be the little brother in the room and
Well,
just kind of ignore it?
yeah, it's hard to say.
Sure.
I've seen it done both
Oh, you don't
ways.
have a crystal ball today?
Well, that would be my forehead. Let me shine that up for you.
Same.
Uh, so, yeah, I see the pros and cons. I'm
Yeah.
very happy the Mead Institute is doing what it's doing with Carvin and Ken.
Yeah.
Um, I really believe mead is worthy of its own thing, but also can compete head on with the best beers and stuff. I
Yeah.
used to run a homebrew competition, Mead for Your Die, which
Yeah.
I created many years ago now. And unfortunately, a bottle exploded in my face one year, and I said maybe not worth the risk um, uh, to
Oh,
to life and limb.
no kidding.
Certainly wouldn't want to lose my eyesight to
Just some poorly
uncontrolled.
trained mead makers lacking, you know, um, forethought.
Yeah, I'm lucky. I really didn't get hurt,
No
and
shit.
that was the pretty much the end of it for me. And I've certainly
No
had my
shit.
share of learning how to deal with stabilization, but that's part of the course of doing business. We make 14% meads. They don't often re-ferment, but we started making 6.5% meads, and guess what?
Those guys
You better figure
like
it
to
out
take
quick.
off.
Yeah, it's that re-fermentation will cause you to lose a lot of market share real quick.
Yeah, because you guys have a bottling line and a canning line as well. So do you have to treat both of those, the products going to the canning line differently than the products going to the bottling line as far as levels of stabilization and whatnot?
Yeah, we only have one mead that's in the can that's
Oh,
almost 14%, and that's 13.5. We
yes, that's
have
some good stuff.
many meads that are 6.8%, which puts them under the threshold for some TTB regulations. Still
Mm,
considered wine, but not needing cola labels and such.
right.
So Yes, knowing your pH meter and knowing how much sulfites and sorbates you need to add, taking into account, like we make our meads at 14%. So when we want to make a 6.8, we're introducing water to lower that ABV level down. So it
Right.
still gives it that big mouth feel, but it also allows us to make it something people aren't going to hurt themselves with drinking a 4 pack of.
Right.
Because I've met people who've drank 4 packs of my 13.5, and yeah, they're like, "Oh yeah, I couldn't even stand up." And I'm like, "That's 2 bottles of wine. What are you doing?" Yeah, like, just if you want to do that, there's easier and cheaper ways to do that.
Yeah. Say not
Um,
many
but
people are drinking a liter and a half of wine a night, pal.
yeah, no, and that's not what I really expected. We kind of thought people would sell them by the can, and people
Sure.
could enjoy them. But and we had to change that name 3 times. It started as "How do you like them apples?" and "How about them apples?" And
Yeah.
yeah, I got sued twice, so I basically came up with a name nobody was going to come up with. Um, but yeah, it's you adapt. That's the key thing about being a mead maker in this
Yeah.
country is.
Yeah.
Do what you can and try to survive the next foray of assaults. I mean,
Yeah.
there was a movie company in this country that stripped the labels off of 65 cases of my mead, labeled it their own, and shipped it around to who knows where, all over the country, outside the country, to promote a movie. And yeah, I complained about it, and they're like, "Well, we did you a favor." And I'm like, "Yeah, but you broke laws. You changed the label. You changed the
Yeah,
legal
that's against
description
the
of
law.
what's in
That's
the
a
bottle. You didn't
federal crime.
you didn't give me any heads up, but you could have asked. I would have worked with you instead of having you strip labels off of my bottles and put
Kidding.
these fucking stupid ass low quality resolution labels on the bottles." And yeah, I mean, yeah, I was trying to get a little compensation out of it because I felt wronged. But
Yeah.
they stripped my trademarks off my own bottles and said, it's
Yeah.
this, and it's promoting this movie. And I'm like, the customer or the journalists are contacting me saying, "Can you tell us about this?" And I'm like, "I don't know what you're talking about." And then they sent a
That's
photo, and I
crazy.
go, "Well, it looks like my bottle, but I still don't know what the hell you're talking about." And they
Yeah.
say, took a photo of the back and said, "Produced and bottled in Londonderry, New Hampshire." And I'm like, "Well, that's certainly my company, but
Yeah.
where the hell they
Where do
buy all
you
the
get
product
these
from?"
things?
And it was underhanded, man. They the big movie studios, and this is a $1 billion company, like a
Sure.
$1 billion company. In my lifetime, if I get to $1 billion company, it ain't gonna happen, right? So you put me and
Right.
my kids and my grandkids, maybe it could happen. But for this company to take advantage of what I've done and what I've built my career around,
Yeah.
just for their promoting of a movie that, you know, okay, it wasn't a bad movie, but still call,
What flavor
pick up the
was
phone.
it? I
So it was
I I
Desire.
I,
They took my flagship,
I said the
stripped the
flagship.
label
Yeah.
off it, and said, "Okay, here it's called Ulysses Gold." I'm like, "What the fuck is Ulysses Gold? What's that got to do with my
It's not
company?"
even gold. It's a red, dark red mead.
Yeah, they were promoting their movie, The Green Knight.
Oh, I don't even remember that one. I'd have
Yeah,
to go
it's
look then.
it's a
I mean,
I
the audacity of them. I mean, regardless of whatever, the audacity of them to buy. I mean, hey, it's cool that they bought 65 cases, but then to take the labels off, and I mean, they're the ones unfortunately jeopardizing you potentially for taking your labels off and selling your stuff around, because when the government gets involved, they don't really give a shit what happened there. That's, hey, your brand, your labels, your bottles going around. That could have very easily came back on you. Whether it would have been your fault or not could have been through litigation, but that could have been years of time and tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars in litigation.
and companies like mine pay taxes to ship alcohol into certain
Right.
states, right? Like we can't just slide it on the side and say, "Oh, it's a movie promotional
What
item,
a
and we don't have to pay
bunch of
the
fucking
excise tax."
clowns. Dude. Yeah, and yeah, like you said, you pay all the fees to the TTB, to the Fed, state, local. I'm sure there's probably about half a dozen different people that are getting taxes and getting change off of your guys' bottles, and these guys just circumvent all that, and then not even. I mean, that's the stinging part, but the real heart hurting part is the potentially jeopardizing your business over something so silly that, like you said, they could have just reached out. You could have easily worked with them and made
Oh, I would have done it
these
with a heartbeat.
compromises.
Like they could have
Right,
put a promotion around this to say, and I would have, yeah, what if I would have sold 100,000 bottles with these guys, right?
right,
Like instead of the 65 cases.
right.
Like, I mean, they really
Oh,
could
wow.
have worked something into this to say,
Yep,
there's an opportunity. Mr. Fairbrother, would you like to work with us on this?
yep.
And what, I'm so small, how would I say no?
Right.
We first got approached by one of the major alcohol producers that was going to make a honey liqueur or honey bourbon or something like
A
that. And they
spirit of
were
some
reaching
sort.
out. Yeah, well, like a bourbon with honey in it. There's
Okay,
some commercial examples now that are pretty well known. But and they're like, oh yeah, we'd like you to make a mead for us, and we'll blend it with bourbon, and we could do this. This could be
sure.
more business than I've done ever, right? And so I'm like just ecstatic, but these things don't always materialize. And so
Right.
you don't bank on it, but sometimes it comes through and sometimes it doesn't. And then, there was one other business opportunity we had. There's a company in Lebanon that imports very high-end items into China to sell at the stores that like the 1% of the Chinese buy stuff at. Like they bring in milk from Holland every day and eggs and stuff. And so they'd done an exhaustive search across the whole country, of the world actually, to figure out what mead they wanted to try to bring in. And they were going to have their own bottles, so we are going to have to adapt to their bottling system and
Sure.
everything like that. And we got down to the last possible step of the way. Like I'm dealing with down to the penny. Like just trying to make sure everything was going to work. We got the right pricing.
Yeah.
We're going to make this work because they were going to take over essentially half my business with what we don't couldn't actually produce enough for. So we have more capacity we could sell right now.
Yeah.
So we got down to that, and this was back when the terrorists were coming across the country with the previous administration, and they go, "Well, yeah, we just got to walk away. It's cheaper to go to Poland and buy mead there than to buy yours." And I'm like,
That's two different complete styles and shit.
"Yeah,
That's
dude, I was
heartbreaking.
so close. It was $1 million a year sale, and I was just like, you got to be kidding me." And everybody's like, "Oh, it'll come back." It don't come
Okay.
back. Yeah, it
Says the
don't
guy
come
who's
back.
never had $1 million me deal thrown in his face.
Yeah. So I
Man.
mean, it's I keep talking about this book I'm trying to write.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Oh,
gotta find the
plug
time to
the
work
book.
on this thing. We're gonna write a book about the trials and tribulations of a mead maker in United States,
Cool.
and
Cool.
mostly a business advisory book. But mead making is kind of how
Yeah.
we made this work. Bernice and I have been working on this book for the last several years, but we got to really focus on it because I think with the insight of small town politics with a restaurant and there's so many chapters of this books that
Yeah.
would just I think give a lot of people a lot of insight without all the heartburn of trying to do it themselves.
Well, I mean, that's the thing that people are loving, like, watching my videos and watching interviews and, hearing conversations with mead makers, experiences yourself is, um, I think there's so many people that have had um, just experience yourself, go out and do it, just make mead, make all those experiences, do all these things yourself and learn it yourself. There's so many people that have tried that method and have gone through that everybody, like newer people like me, are like, my whole thing is I want to learn from everybody's really hard, painful, ruthless mistakes and not have to recreate those to learn. Uh, uh, I heard a saying, I can't remember who was the quote from, but a smart man learns from his experiences. A wise man learns from other people's experiences,
Right.
and that's what I want to do. Is I'm trying to take, and I'm really trying to encourage more mead makers to make that jump to. Okay, don't just go out there and just start throwing yeast and honey and all these things that you've heard and read and seen on the internet and everything. Don't just go that. Do a little bit of research at least and try to do your pocketbook, your ingredients, and your final product a little bit of justice by learning from the vast knowledge that's in front of us. Mead being the oldest fermented beverage in the world, there's so much knowledge that's out there to to ignore it and just throw caution to the wind and start throwing shit in a bucket to me seems so like flying a flag in the face of everybody that's come before you.
Yeah, you got Steve Fletty, you got Ken Tram,
Amazing.
who really, really good books on mead making. Yeah, I got asked to review a book on mead making that I didn't quite find up to par, so I didn't put my name on it.
Good.
But it's I I believe in tried and true knowledge, right?
Yeah.
Like there's a reason you added staggered nutrients to your yeast, so that you can keep your yeast happy. There's not yeast assumable nitrogen in honey like you have in grape wines. So
Yeah.
the yeast needs that. And why do and even if what works for me, other people can make work for them,
Yeah.
that doesn't mean what I'm doing is right, right? Doesn't mean what they're doing is wrong, right? Like
True.
my experiences, like with diammonium phosphate, leads me to not want to ever use diammonium phosphate. But there are
Right.
mead makers that can make great mead with diammonium phosphate.
Right.
So it's just you got to figure out what tools work for you,
Yep.
how they work, and understand the difference. Like you don't try to put a tack in a wall with a sledgehammer, right? Like you need to understand when a tack hammer is needed and when a sledgehammer is needed. And
Well
it's
played.
just different tools mean different things. And it's the taste, it's the smell. Like when I'm making mead, I'm tasting it as it's going
Yeah.
through fermentation, and I'm smelling it to smell what's coming off the fermentation so that I can
Yes.
understand what I want to do and where I want to plan and what I want to adjust to here. Like whether I want to
Oh,
change the
that's
temperature, whether I want to degas, whether I want to, add another yeast, or whether I want to try to modify the pH of where we're going to.
yeah.
If it's the wrong time of year, what am I doing about the temperature? Because we don't have heaters on our fermenters, and our meadery roughly about 55 degrees right now. So my staff wears jackets and hats while they're working, and that's the reality. I don't want to heat up the whole room to
Yeah.
just try to get a batch out the door.
Yeah. No, and that's really good to hear that. I mean, you take all those things in consideration, but the one that most intrigues me is the fact that you um, test your meads as throughout the fermentation process. I had posted, I don't know, last year sometime that I was doing this, that, I was tasting it as I was going, and several people, I think it was in either a Facebook group or on Reddit or something, had commented like, "Why are you tasting it during fermentation? It's not going to taste like that in the final product." It was getting like probably three or four different people giving me the business over it, and all I could think to myself, I didn't really respond to anybody. I could think to myself is, you don't taste your mead during fermentation process.
No, well, it's important to understand what's happening during fermentation,
Yeah,
right? So you could be creating ethanol or fusels, alcohols that you really don't want to be creating, right? So, like when we use a very heavy, 6 pounds of blueberries per gallon mead, like our wild,
nice,
that's a pretty damn big fruit cap on the top of this thing. I mean, I could pretty close
damn
to
right.
walk across the top of this fermenter. Yeah, and I'm not a little boy, so I'd go right through it. But
Right.
you need so when there's fruit on the top of a fermentation, that's
Yeah.
an insulation blanket, and that traps that heat. And so yeast is exothermic. It generates more heat the faster it ferments, and the more temperature it generates, the faster it ferments. So that's that exothermic reaction. And
Yeah.
so you need to be able to have a way to release that temperature. Otherwise, you will get that fusel note, and then it takes years of aging to get
Yeah.
rid of it. And yeah, yeah, it's possible, but it's not ideal. I mean, for me,
Sure.
ideal is 3 months start to finish. That mead's ready to go, and it's back in a bottle and it's out the door. And I got to pay the
Right.
folks that gave me 30-day terms on the honey, so that I can, even though I'm 90 days in on this, so there's a lot of business around this thing.
Yeah. I think that's one thing that a lot of people are afraid of when they make that jump from homebrew to commercial is those larger payments on those things on the honey. Yeah, you do get the terms, you got your T's and C's and whatnot, but I can only imagine what I can't remember what the exact number you said was that goes in each batch, thousands of gallons or pounds. Like
9,000.
that cannot be a fun bill to pay at the end of the month.
At the lowest price, it's $18,000.
Holy
It's
Christmas.
typically about
That's actually pretty fair
24,000.
though. That's that's $2 a pound. Hell, good for you, man. Good for you.
I buy a lot of honey, about 40,000 pounds a year.
40,000 pounds a year. Do you feel like you've had to make sacrifices in the quality of the honey that you've made,
No,
or that you purchase as
I've,
your?
I've,
Oh,
I've really gone to
that's a
buying
hard
the most
quick. Yep.
exclusive honeys that I can buy. So we get approached all the time to buy cheap honey. Like people say, "Yeah, I'll sell you a sample or give you a sample of
Yeah.
it." Whatever. I never watched The Sopranos. You could send me a sample. Doesn't mean it's coming from the vat of honey that you want to sell me.
Right.
Yeah, we've had some interesting honeys we've gotten over the years. I mean, Samuel
Yeah.
Adams Brewery had sold us roughly 9,000 pounds of heather blossom honey that they used to make their porter from, and that honey has a very very peculiar flavor to it. It
Yeah.
tastes more like honey than honey does. It's
Weird.
it's assertive. Yeah, and I keep mentioning Gordon because he's a friend, but he was up at the meadery once, and he goes, "Well, Mike, you're going to know what it takes to make a 9-year-old mead, because it's going to take some time to let this thing get to perfection," and pretty
Whoa.
much on clockwork. It was about 9 years in that this thing started to become
Drinkable.
exceptional, and we released some of our wild that was made with heather. I still got two or three aged barrels, still apple and heather, and it's. I was pulling out the wine thief the other day to go around these barrels and try them,
Yeah.
and it's so strong, the honey flavor, and it's just like, wow, you just can't.
Hide it.
It's it's not like buckwheat. Buckwheat is,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
tend to not like the super dark honeys too much. I like the lighter flavor or lighter colored honeys, less
Yeah.
mineral content. I find them a little easier to work with and make mead that most people will enjoy. The really dark
Same.
honeys and the really strong flavored honeys like the heather, it takes a certain customer to walk in that door. But when they walk in that door and they taste it, they look at me and they go, okay, how much of this you
Right.
got hidden around? Because I'm taking it
They
all.
start writing a blank check here. You fill this out later. I'll take these cases and I'm heading out the door.
Yeah, you'd be surprised.
Oh,
You'd be surprised how often that happens.
oh, and I think the way you put it, you put it beautifully though. It takes the right type of customer for those types of things. There's so many people out there that just kind of poo-poo those darker honeys. You can't make a good buckwheat traditional. I made a Manuka honey traditional and ended up taking best in its category at a mead competition. So those types of things can be done, like you said, with the given the proper circumstances and everything. Uh, it's amazing to see that somebody like yourself is out there picking up that volume of honey and still feeling like they're getting a quality product, and that gives me hope for lots of other smaller meaderies that are looking to make that jump into that scale up jump.
Yeah, I mean, I've actually had the USDA guys,
Hmm.
the inspectors, show up with guns on their hips, uh, trying to figure out about honey importing into the United States because they're
Wait,
trying
what?
to track down. Yeah, yeah. Well, it's a big business,
Adulterated
right?
honey?
Adulterated honey or honey that was not had not paid its tax, right?
Oh yeah,
So
no duty.
there
Yeah,
there's where there's taxes involved, there's guns involved, right? And so, they came in, they looked at everything. I got records for every pound of honey
sure.
we've ever bought. And I was very happy to work with them because, the last thing I want is somebody cheating the system. That's why,
Oh yeah,
when I hear of people trying to sell meat off the internet and not pay their TTB or excise taxes, it pisses the shit out of what I do because here
yeah,
I am trying to make a living playing by the rules. And, there are other people just trying to skirt the rules because they don't want to pay their taxes. Well, grow up, pay your taxes, and do what everybody else does, play by the rules. It's how we do
yeah.
business in this country.
There's a lot of meaderies that I've mead makers and brewers to that same extent, to be fair, that had got their start going that route of the suspect, my terminology, selling meat out the back of the trunk, so to speak. Do you is that a less viable way of making your business. It's
Yeah,
akin to
I
the
think
old say rum running during Prohibition era.
yeah,
You're skirting the
there
law to get
there
something done.
there are better ways I think that could be accomplished. I
Sure.
mean, it's here I am, 14 years in trying to figure out how to keep my company afloat. So,
Right.
I can't say I want to cut corners, but I'm never going to try to cheat the government out of their taxes because they will shut you down and they will prevent you from ever doing this again. So,
Oh yeah.
there's risk associated with your choices. And,
Yeah.
I've reached out to a lot of friends to help get me to where I am right now. And, we're teetering, as they say, because I never expected to start a restaurant without the operating capital to do so, and
Yeah.
yeah, I've got an awful lot of equity, but equity doesn't pay the bills very well.
No,
So it's
unfortunately.
it's a tough situation,
Yeah.
and so as I sell off the last of our utopian X, which is 10 years in the barrel,
Yeah.
or whatever else. I mean, I got some pretty good customers. I got one customer who bought 14 cases of our
Ooh, hot
utopian,
damn.
at 250 a bottle. That's not a bad day,
No
and
shit.
you got to believe in what you do. You got to believe in
Absolutely.
how you make it work and be creative. And between Bernice and I, there's been a lot of sleepless nights as we
Yeah.
try to figure out how to get from here to there. But there's so much that we've done in life that can never be taken away. There's
Yeah.
so much that we've put our heart and souls into it, and for the only gain of just trying to make it better for everybody else. We've got laws changed at the federal and state levels.
Yeah.
We've believed in this. Know, I've got a brewery, I've got a winery, I've got a restaurant, I've got,
Yeah.
passion. I've got a farmstead that I want to have Mead Renaissance festivals at, but we'll
Dude,
see
that's
if I
so
can
cool.
get there. These things don't always happen, but you got to be
No,
prepared to pivot.
yeah. And to be, for what it's worth, I completely agree with you. There's definitely better ways of going about things than trying to undercut the government and go about things less than optimal way of doing things because, you've taken a quite literally your lifetime or a lifetime to get where you're at and to develop the connections and um the you know the je ne sais quoi, this entity that you've created. Something that's a greater than the sum of its parts, and that's by no small feat, yours and your family's contribution to the business. um so if there's anything else, anything I can ever do to help support your business, please, let me know. I would gladly have you back on again.
I'd love to come back.
I'm honored to be able to talk to you, and I would love to have you actually come back on, and we could talk about your time as the AMMA president, maybe even some competition type questions, because I'm actually going to have the AMMA on, and I have some very firm questions for those guys as far as that, because I feel that there's it's the organization's gone through a lot of changes in the years that they've been around, and it's interesting.
Yeah, don't ask me behind the scenes questions because
I've got I've got plenty
I
of
should
behind
keep
the
my
scenes
mouth shut.
information, my man.
Yeah. So, I mean, I really appreciate what you've done, TK. That's why I
Oh,
gave the
awesome. Well, thank you.
discount up for you and your followers to if they wanted to visit our shop, order some of our meads. Yeah, I got into this for the pure passion of it. I'm still here fighting on it on a daily basis. I really all
Yeah,
I want to see is every meadery. I consider my fellow mead makers my colleagues, not my competition, because I
awesome.
believe that. With being colleagues, we help each other. So,
Yeah,
it's not every day anymore, but, for a long time it was, I get a phone call almost daily from somebody asking about how to do stuff. And when I was trying to figure it out, I was giving Brad and I was giving Mike Fall a call and David at Redstone a call to talk to them about
yeah,
mead making and I you put in the time you try to figure out and try to undercut other people by just not paying your taxes
Yeah.
doesn't help the industry, doesn't help anybody. There are better ways to raise money.
Yeah. You
And
better
if
be doing.
anybody's familiar with how to raise money, please give me a call because I could use some help.
No kidding, my man. I think we could all use the help monetarily at this point. But anybody who out there is watching this who's not following Moonlight Meadery, Hidden Moon Brewing, or Over the Moon Farmstead, go give those guys a follow on all their social medias. They're doing some phenomenal stuff. And like I said, go check out their Vino shipper. They've got meads priced from incredibly reasonable entry level prices all the way up to the connoisseur level stuff and everything in between. So again, thank you, Michael, for joining me today. I can't wait till we speak again. And I, again, thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be able to pick your brain today.
Okay, my pleasure, sir. Thank you.
Awesome. Have a good rest of your night, my man, and we'll be in touch.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for joining me tonight. That was a fantastic interview. I agree with many of you down there. Michael was a phenomenal guest. Again, that discount TKN Drinks. Go to vinoshipper.com. Hit up or it's shopmeads.com, or go to their website at moonlightmeadery.com. Enter TKN Drinks as your code during checkout, and they'll take 5% off your purchase. Like I said, at the price of that Utopia for about $2.50, that is free shipping on a bottle of mead, which is not something you get very often. So definitely go check those guys out. Grab yourself a couple bottles, grab yourself a single bottle, whatever you got to do. Moonlight Meadery's been in the game for a hot minute, and they are, defining styles, quite literally defining styles with their meads as the meads that define the styles for the 2015 BJCP style guidelines. So thank you all for being here tonight. And next week I will be on with Zambezi Gold and Forest Friends. They are an African honey supplier supplying Zambezi honey out of, I can't remember what country they are, but we're going to have them on. Special guest, Ken Schramm. Be a whole thing. Maybe we'll even get a code for some honey discounts or something. But anybody who is interested in getting African honey, Zambezi honey at a decent price from fair trade suppliers and all that type of stuff, join us next week, and we'll be talking with those guys and everything. Appreciate everybody being here today live, and again, always those who join me afterwards. Have a fantastic rest of your evening, and I will speak with you all in the future. Peace.